Good morning to some, good afternoon to others. This is Jeff Gamble, Indianapolis, Indiana, and this is the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. Today, we're actually going over law number 8, the law of intuition. So appreciate everybody for joining us. If you're catching us on the replay, please type in replay where you're actually watching from. Joyce is with us. Hello, hello. How are things? Just waiting for Bess to come on, and we are going to get rolling. There she is. Welcome. Chad's with us. What's happening?
Hey, everybody. Good day. We are rolling. Hey, if you are here and if you're committed to be a great leader, put a thumbs up in the comments, because I'd like to thank you for that and welcome you. Also, if you'd like to hear the replay, we'd like to see that and also where you're from. So the law of intuition, number 8 of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. This is what separates the good from the great leaders, and how you're going to learn today how they evaluate everything from a leadership bias. And also can you develop intuition? Do you have to have it? Are you born with it, or can you develop it? So we're going to learn these things today. We are Jeff David Gamble of My Leadership Network, also certified John Maxwell trainer, speaker, and coach. And Bess McCarty of the MLM Millionaire Club School for Network Marketers, also the shrink of MLM. And we partner every lunchtime, noon Eastern time, to bring you these MLM lunchtime leadership shows. There's a Facebook group for that, and you can request to join there. It's generic. We have entrepreneurs all over. In fact, our purpose is to help people grow, to educate, equip, and empower entrepreneurs and create independent servant leaders. So grab a pen and paper, because there's always an avalanche of tips coming your way, and maybe you'll grab one today that will be your $1 million idea. Over to Jeff.
Okay, guys, what we're going to do is launch right into this. Leaders evaluate everything with a leadership bias. Bess just went over that. The law of intuition. It says leaders not only look at everything with a leadership bias, but this is intuition. This is a little bit of feeling, but it's also a lot of thought. It's basically adding everything up and saying what is best for the team. That's what you have to ask yourself. What is best for the team? There's a difference between, mediocre leaders and amazing leaders. Amazing leaders always ask the right questions. John actually wrote another book called Great Leaders Ask Good Questions. So that's one of the questions you're going to want to ask. Not everyone is intuitive in every area of leadership, but everyone possesses intuition in their particular area of strength. So if you have a certain area that you're strong in, usually you have intuition in that area. Maybe when to do something, when to have that conversation. It could be very feeling based, knowing when you need to stop and actually take time with the person. It could be, intuition on when to, launch a market, or when to launch a meeting, or when to push somebody to the next level. And I don't mean like physically push them. I mean like mentally push them. Hey, this is time to get up and make that move. Vicky's with us. Hello. So living the law of intuition, it says the law of intuition depends on much more than the facts. It's the facts plus instinct plus the conditions that are going on. So just because it was right for one person doesn't mean it's right for everybody. Why? Because some people have different personalities. It may be right for a certain market, but it's not right for every market. Why? Because there may be different people in the market, different timing, different seasons. Hey, this is the time to do this certain campaign. Obviously, February in northern Wisconsin might not be the time to stand out with a sign on a street corner. You got to have some intuition. 7 feet of snow, white sign, can't see them, can't see the snow coming down, dangerous. So you have to know, not only when to do stuff and what the right time and the right people, but also the conditions that are going on. Nancy's with us. Hello. So who you are determines what you see. Who you are determines what you see. Stephanie's with us. Hello. So you have to kind of evaluate, who's in front of you. And I think more importantly, when we say who you are depends on what you see, look in the mirror, who you are. How are you going to treat something? A lot of times has to do with our own self-worth and self-value. So if we don't feel value, that we're going to get value out of it, how do we transfer that to somebody else? For instance, hey, I'm broke. I don't have the money to go to this next event. Oh my gosh, but we need to promote the event. How are you going to promote an event that you don't have the money to go to and affect people positively? It's almost impossible. Denise is with us. Hello. So what we do is we transfer our own limiting beliefs to other people. That's not good. So you constantly want to work on yourself. Jim Rohn says, you know, as you build yourself, you know, work harder on yourself than you do anything else. The reason we work harder on ourselves than we do anything else is because the harder we work on ourselves and the more we increase our own self-worth, the more we're going to be able to increase our value and be able to affect other people. Rico's with us. What's happening, sir? So we constantly want to work on ourselves. We constantly want to work on our own ability to affect people. Lucy's with us. Everybody's jumping on here this morning. It's awesome. Welcome, everybody. So if you want to see more, be more. That's kind of the John's little tip. As I go back through the lesson, as a law of the lid, review your score on the qualities of a leader. Do things that will increase those qualities. You know, how do you increase the qualities? Well, number one, you can learn about them. You can learn about them. You can read about them. Number two, you want to get around a mastermind group. This would be a mastermind group. You want to get around and actually talk and find out how people are using these lessons. The more stories, what I found is the more stories, and Bess talks a lot about this, the more stories, not only just stories are things people remember, but stories are also things that affect other people. Kyle's with us. Nancy's with us. So things affect us in a different way where we're actually going to see, hear, and in some cases transfer that feeling and understand what actually somebody did in a situation will help us see it the next time or hear it the next time. And then we have the intuition to go, hey, I've heard somebody do this before. This is when it should happen. And, you know, I'm learning that in a lot of different ways because I have a D-type personality and I see things because things that are moving fast, D's usually like. And what I mean by that is I can evaluate a room and I can kind of see, hey, this is the time to do something because I can see people messing around on their phones or I can see people losing, you know, thought, distraction. You know, I'm very visual at what's going on. So visual is usually a fast-paced, fast-moving, the D-type personality. One thing I'm not so good at is when to stop and take individual time to actually talk with somebody and affect somebody. It's something I've had to work very, very hard on. But once I started doing it and I got that, I know that I'm still not the best at it. So what I will do is I'll be able to identify it as an issue, ask the question, hey, is something really bothering you? And then actually move that person to somebody else who's better at, you know, maybe empathy, who's better at maybe walking that person through what's going on. So once I started doing that, it was amazing what happened in my business because people were like, oh, he actually does care a little bit about this. And what I mean a little bit about this is before it didn't seem like I cared about anything other than running the event and moving things forward. That was just my personality. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was just I knew my objective in my mind was to do this. In some cases, I didn't even see it. You know, for a long time, I didn't see it. And people would ask me, they're like, didn't you see that that was a problem? I was like, no, because my strength was to overlook some of the emotional to be able to get the task done. That was just where my strength lied. So you have to be able to identify what you're good at and then be able to identify other people. I was like, you know what? I'm not that good at it. But I had a gentleman on my team who was very good at that. His background was he was a pastor. His background was an S-type personality. So I was able to actually bring him over and say, hey, I want to introduce you to somebody. You know, you just told me this, you know, story that's going on. I think somebody, I'm gonna actually bring somebody to you that might be better at helping you get past or get over or get, you know, around that. And almost without exception, it worked every time. So you just have to identify what you're good at, what you're not, and involve other people what you're doing. And this is why it's so important inside of MLM, inside of direct sales, inside of network marketing, to understand who you're working with. Who you're working with is more important than what you're working on. In the area of a profession, look for ways to be better. How can you be better at what you do? You know, sometimes, yes, it is more of the activity, but if you're doing the activity without recognizing and identifying who people are and understanding who people are, more of the activity necessarily isn't going to help you. You know, and I say this all the time, you have to connect with somebody before they'll actually listen to you a little bit. So that's why form is so important. Form, family or friendly, occupation, finding out who they are and what they do. Recreation, and then the message, the motivation, or the money. that's when you get to explain. So just being able to sit down and, you know, especially when people meet for the first time, I found so many people meet for the first time and their objective in their head is, I've got to present the information, you know, especially when we're doing presentations and in direct sales. So they'll call somebody and be like, hey, I need to tell you something right away. You know, whether they use the script that kind of breaks the ice and says, hey, I need a favor, I need to share with you. And I've actually seen this too. Hey, I need a favor. You know, they do that part right. They're doing the right activity, but they're not intuitive to what's going on. They're like, hey, I just need a second. I need a huge favor. I just started in something outside of my job and I want to share with you what I'm doing. So if you run into the right person, you know, you can refer people to me. And they're like, that's okay. I was just in a car accident. I came home. My house is on fire. I'm currently dragging my kids out of the house. There's smoke everywhere. And they're like, oh, no problem. I just need 15 minutes. Let me, you know, and you're like, you completely, did you hear the fact that they said they were in a car accident? Did you hear the fact that they said the house is on fire? And here's the thing, that person didn't hear anything. They heard nothing. Why? Well, because they were so thinking about them that they didn't have time or even put together the other person. It was me, 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 me. And now that I'm done talking about me, what do you think about me? You know, there's a lot of people who are out there. That's, unfortunately, that's who I was. Like, I only saw my objective and what I was trying to do. And I wasn't really listening to what the other person was really saying. You know, oh my gosh, I've had a long day. You know, something horrible happened at work. And you know, certain people are like, wow, that's exciting. Let me tell you about my business. What happened? What are you talking about? Well, you know, my boss just found out this and, you know, they're passing away and the whole company's shutting down and I'm not going to have a job. And they're like, you know, you never ask that question. You're like, man, I just don't understand why anybody's getting in. Nobody's getting in my business. I'm like, because you're not listening. You're not intuitive to actually understand what is going on. I can't remember the gentleman Eric Worre actually interviewed, but it was a gentleman from a very, very large company. He makes about $2.5 million a year. And he said, what you're doing is you're looking for people who are exactly at noon. Exactly at noon, people are going to sign up. You know, if they're at 6 o'clock, they're on the opposite side of signing up. They're asleep mentally. They're asleep physically. They're asleep, you know, taking action. They're not going to take action. But most of us don't recognize that because we don't even ask the question to begin with, where is this person at? Talk to them about using forms. Yeah. So you want to be able to get to know who people are and what's going on, knowing their personality. Now, you can do this very fast. I can do this with a lead, somebody I've never met before, by pre-qualifying them and asking them a couple questions right off the bat. You know, hey, am I catching a good time? Yes, I have a couple minutes right now. Okay, good. I just need to ask you a couple questions real quick to find out if now is a good time to actually go through this information and if you're ready to move to the next step so I can get you in front of the information. You know, the first question is are you working currently? And I talked to them about that. Are you looking for something part-time or full-time? I asked them about that. You know, what's more important to you, the money or the time, you know, being able to control it? There's certain questions I'm going to ask in a certain order because they're in a certain order, because if you answer that one wrong, there's no reason to move forward. I'm done. I'm not even going to present to people. Like, you have somebody on the phone, you're not even going to present to them all the time. Hey, are you busy right now? Do you have anything going on? So here's intuition. Are they really listening? Hey, are you busy right now? Is it, yeah. Oh yeah. Hold on. Let me put it on speaker real quick. By the way, if you put me on speaker and I can hear 50 other things, like you ordering at McDonald's, or you're in a gas station line, or, you know, you're trying to take care of your kids and I can hear you having another conversation with somebody while watching TV, while flipping through your phone, looking on Facebook, like I can actually hear that now because I've been on the phone with so many people. I've actually mid-sentence just hung up on people. Why? Because I know they're not listening. This is not my person. This is not, I've told people, hey, I can tell right away you're not the person. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? I can tell you're not paying attention or you're not at the level of the people that I want to talk to. Speakerphone while you're riding a bike in a hailstorm and you say it's an okay time for you to talk. If that's okay to you, I know right away what you're going to do to our clients. You're not our guy. And most people don't even think, oh, well, I guess that would be a bad, you know, person to try to, you know, but you're like, oh man, I had them on the phone and they just won't get in. I just don't understand why. Intuition. Once you present hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of times, you can make these decisions very, very quickly. But what you're missing is, you know, what John says in the beginning here, you're looking for three things: facts plus instincts plus conditions. You're missing the conditions of seeing it over and over and over again. Once you see that condition over and over again, you can make decisions real fast. With that, I'm going to turn this back over to Bess for her thoughts on the law of intuition before we move forward.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff. And great stories and examples. I'd like to welcome Joyce, Adrian, Vicky, Kirsten, Rossi, Nancy, Stephen, Lucy, Becky, BJ, and Fernando. And Becky's question, if I understand it right, is that when's the best time to use form when you're getting acquainted with somebody? When's the best time? Well, let's take two cases. Let's say that you already know the person, but now you're having coffee and catching up. Well, you can ask them about those four things. They're usually just one or two. You know, you don't need to go through every one. How's your family? How's your occupation? How's your recreation? How's your dreams? So you don't need to, you know, grill them on every four, but sometimes just, you know, how's the family doing? What's happening for you? And how's your job going? So it's a way to catch up with people. Number two, it's a way to get acquainted with brand new people. Let's say that you're in a restaurant seating area, you're waiting for your tables, and there's other people there, and you strike up a conversation. So you can ask the person, you know, well, what do you do? You know, do you have a family? How many kids do you have? Really? How old are they? And so people love talking about themselves, really. And oh boy, a listening ear, an interested person. So that's when you can use that form or forward in all cases, you know, to catch up or with a brand new person. So at the beginning, that's a good time, because at the beginning of either one, because you want to connect. And the best way to connect is get them talking about themselves, because they love talking about themselves. They love having a curious, interested person. I remember taking a car trip with my son, who was grown by that time. And I just became curious in his life. I mean, you know, sometimes he would be a little private with his life and all that, but he started warming up and opening up and sharing enthusiastically, just because I sat there and I was genuinely curious about him. Well, what's that like? You know, what is your workday like when that happens? And how do you handle that? And just interested, you know, so it gives a comment, then you ask a question off that. Just like Jeff said, if the person said, hey, my house burned down yesterday, you ask them a question about that. Like, wow, are you okay? Did you lose any pets? You know, did anybody get hurt? Where are you staying right now? You know, you ask them questions about that. Not, oh, okay. I'm sorry to hear that. And here's my business. So, you know, ask them questions about what they just said. It's not hard to do. So back to intuition. That happens to be an area that I find kind of magical and mysterious, and that I've been wanting to develop better. For a couple of years, that's been one of my goals, is to develop better what I call inner guidance or intuition. And I'm reading a book on that right now called Your Inner Guidance by Ann Archer Butcher. And she has story after story, and they're really cool stuff. She's the one who was the high school teacher, and she found herself you know, writing things on the board. She had prepared quotes, but then when she began to write, it felt like the chalk took a life of its own, and she was writing quotes from she didn't know where. But then she found out from the librarian, because that was before computers, that she found out, you know, that was Plato and Socrates that was coming through her chalk. And she trusted that, because as a little girl, she had asked people how to be in touch with that inner guidance, that intuition. And the best advice she got was from her mom when she was a little girl. She went around and asked all the neighbors and everybody. She was really serious about that. How, you know, and her mom gave her the advice of to listen. And that takes being still enough to hear that inner thoughts that come through, which I swear sometimes are not my own. Because sometimes things come through to me that I didn't know before. Or I'm working with a client and I'll say something about their grandmother, and they go, how did you know that my grandmother was the one I looked to? And it really, you know, your comment about my grandmother just shifted me right there. How did you know that? I couldn't know it. I couldn't know it intellectually. But because of my intent that I want to help this person, and how can I best help this person? I ask life that, how can I best help this person? And things come through that are perfect for them. This happens over and over. And I think anyone can do this. Anyone can develop this. I believe it's that intent to be a good leader, teacher, coach. And that's actually what happened with Ann Archer Butcher before she went in to teach the high schoolers. She would say, what can I give these people today? What can I give these students today that they will really need and use? And then later on, one of them came back and said, we know what you're doing, but we don't know how you do it. A few of us talked, and we found that we'd have a question that day, or even collectively have a question. Several of us, we walk in and there would be the answer on the board that you had written before we came in, you know, that the chalk wrote. It was perfectly matched up. So some of it is trusting, well, number one, having the intent to serve. How can I help my team today? How somebody's stuck on my team, how can I best help them? Having that intent, you know, help them in the way they need, not in the way that I think, you know, get to meetings, do this, tell them to do stuff, but how can I help them in the way that will be right for this person at this time, which is going to be unique to that person time. It won't really repeat. So you can't be lazy. We can't be lazy and fall back on what has worked before or a memorized method or anything like that. It needs to be in the moment for that person uniquely, or for that situation. Like Jeff said, you walk in and a leader can read the room. They can read and react and do what's needed in the room, or for an individual. So I believe it comes from asking and then listening and then trusting the answer, trusting that nudge. And notice how you feel when you get a nudge. Usually it's not when I'm in fear. Usually it's when I'm in a feeling of some sort of confidence of something bigger than me, my higher self, or whatever that you want to call it, speaking and leading. And I get a good feeling when it's true intuition coming in. And I've learned to trust my nudges and follow them, even if it's uncomfortable to, that the situation works out perfectly for all involved. Now, there's a second thing about intuition, and that is being prepared. John Maxwell calls that in his book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, number 8, The Law of Intuition. He calls it informed intuition. And I call it like doing your due diligence beforehand so that you can be ready when stuff happens. So here's what happened. John Maxwell spoke to, he went to the University of Southern California and spoke to their football team, the Trojans. And he had an opportunity to look into their war room, like the war strategy. And on every wall was a chalkboard that the coaches had filled with mapped out scenarios and situations. They thought out every possible situation that their team could be in and the play that then they needed to do to succeed. And the 3 quarterbacks had to memorize every single one of those many, many plays that were all over the wall, so that they could be ready on the field in any situation. They would know, you know, instinctively and immediately what to do. And they drilled them and grilled them. And one of them even slept in that room overnight before every game, because he said, I have to know these things in a flash. You know, there's no time to get out a piece of paper and look at that. I have to know them in a flash. So there's something about preparing yourself that comes into the intuition process. You know, you immediately pull up the right thing because you've had that experience or because you've studied that. And that is how I see our Sunday night basics class, like this war room. We drill in the basics again and again and again until you get them, and they're so deep within you and so ingrained in you that you can pull them out and use them at will. You are a well-disciplined, trained team. That's our goal with you, with our Quick Start Basics class on Sunday night. Some of you are in that class, and I'd love to hear any opinion you have about that. Becky, did that answer your question okay? And I have another story, but I'll turn it over to Jeff for now.
Okay, guys. 3 levels of leadership on intuition. Those that naturally understand intuition. Certain people just get it. They get it as soon as they walk in the room. Whoever they talk to, it comes to them instantly. And they say, hey, before we do anything else, we need to identify and figure this out. Most people in the room are like, huh? What do we need to figure out? Because most people are what? Looking down at their phones, interested in what's going on in their life, not what's going on around them. 2, those who can be nurtured to understand leadership. There are certain people you just need to take aside and say, hey guys, we need to sit down. We need to look at this. Do you understand what's going on? Do you understand that if somebody has a blank stare and they're not connecting to the idea that you need to stop what you're doing and figure it out? Oh, I didn't even think of that. You know, the reason they're not getting started is they just told you that they were diagnosed with something. The reason they're not getting started is they just told you they're about to lose their job. The reason they're just getting started is they told you that their house payment's behind. The reason they're not getting started is they're scared that their kids aren't going to be able to eat. And your only worry is you're not going to hit your goal this month. Stop looking at yourself and start looking at other people. You know, so it takes a minute, but you just have to be able to sit down and say that. And unfortunately, as John says, there are those people that will never understand leadership. Never understand. Why? The only reason you're not going to understand leadership is because you're so busy worrying about yourself that you don't have time to look or understand anything else. And there's certain people out there that that's just who they are. They're so into them and what they're doing and their own BS and their own problems and their own woes and their own this, that, and the other. They just don't connect to anything on the outside of them. Why? Because when your self-esteem is so low, it takes you just focusing on yourself to get out of bed and get out in the morning. You need to work on you first before you're going to go out and affect everybody else. And that's why certain people have such a hard time recruiting people in the beginning. And I was one of those people. You know, it took me a decade. It took me a decade of working on me to get me to a point where even the worst person would join. You know, I mean, that's reality. You know, the worst person would join. The person who's like, well, I have money, I don't think I can do this, but I like you, you know, so I'll get in with you just so you're not alone. Like the Lisbon mentioned in the training last night, they always think of every scenario they can, they can come across when responding to the call. Yeah, so you have to be able to think of every possibility, you know, going in of what's going on. Nancy just put that up. So there are those who will never understand leadership. So develop intuition by developing your thinking. Research the project. Researching the project is understanding the career you're in, understanding what you're trying to create. A lot of people are in network marketing and forget that it's about people. You know, I just need to move product. I just need to move product. So what happens is if you need to move product, you get into sales mode. Sales mode. I just need to sell. I just need to sell more. I just need to close more. I just need to get more people buying my product. That's one way to look at it. You know, another way to look at it is I'm going to make friends with a bunch of people. I'm going to build a giant network, and it doesn't matter what product we have. I'll outsell everybody else. Why? I simply have more people who will follow what we're doing. You know, if I set the example of, hey, we're buying one of these or we're buying 10 of these, if I set the example, I have a network of people who will do the same thing. Getting a lot of people to do a little bit over a long enough period of time. 2, render the plan. So if you want to develop intuition, developing your thinking by render a plan or the plan on what to go do. Sometimes you need to run that plan by someone else who's been there longer. And if 10 people who have been there longer, who have seen the cycle do this before, go, I wouldn't do that if I were you, and they go all in, then when it doesn't work, it's really up to them. That's when you learn the hardest lessons. And, you know, I have people who are going to learn some really hard lessons soon, you know, just soon. Let's just put it that way. 3, rehearse the play. Rehearsing the play just means, you know, understanding the game, running through the scenario, making sure the beginning's right, the middle's right, the end's right, and you're ready to go. Because when you have those connecting dots and you're ready to go and you've got it down, then you can go out and you can affect people, you can influence people, you can use your intuition to move forward. It says, once you have a burning desire and you live with purpose within that desire, the decisions come quickly and easily, and seldom, if ever, do you change your mind. One thing Napoleon Hill goes on to say in the book Think and Grow Rich is, successful people make decisions quickly and change their mind seldom to never. Unsuccessful people consistently change their mind and rarely ever get to a point where they commit to anything long term. Why? Because they take forever to make the decision. Oh, I don't know. Oh, well, this possibility. Oh, well, that. See, the reason successful people are able to move so fast is because if you know what your value system is, and you know what you will and will not do, and you know what your objective is, then if this plus this plus this equals what you want, you make the decision just like that. But when you're not sure what your value system is, and you really don't have a plan of where you're trying to get to, which most people don't, well, I kind of, sort of, maybe, kind of might want to, you know, make some more, I don't know, you know, every time that I get started, it doesn't work. And, you know, every time I get into these things, you know, this happens. And, you know, right now the plants are growing outside and my grass is too tall. And, you know, I was going to get a cup of coffee, but now it's cold. I mean, I love the fact when I talk to people and they bring in like 6 irrelevant points that have nothing to do with what's going on. You can just tell where somebody's mission is, where somebody's value is. Just let them bring in 3 or 4 points that have nothing to do with the conversation at all. You kind of know right off the bat, this is not a person who's headed in a direction, in any direction. They're just kind of circling, and whatever kind of they come up and see, oh yeah, that's what we're going to work on today. You know, today it's the grocery store, you know, list, and tomorrow I need to fix this giant hole in the middle of my house because that's been there for, you know, since last winter, and we might want to get to it because the next winter's coming up. You know, it's just amazing. Priorities, you know, I know we're going to talk about that here coming up. Is that tomorrow? Nope, the law of magnetism is tomorrow, but priorities is another one that, you know, it's like what to do in what order. Most people need a class or need a college degree in what to do in what order to move ahead and get forward. So leading others to the law of intuition, listen for the following that indicates the opportunity to teach this law. You know, I know in my gut I need to. That would be one. You know, I feel that I need to do this, but I just don't know. Of course you don't know. You don't have a plan. I get a hunch, but I'm not really sure how to do it. I know I need to talk to people, but I don't know what to say. What do I say? Say something. That would be better than nothing. Wayne Dyer says, if prayer is talking to God, then intuition is when God talks to us. If you get that feeling, find somebody who knows how to help you. Find somebody who knows how to help you and work with them. Some people believe you have to be in the right place at the right time. Almost every leader is in the right place at the right time. Other people are in the same place at the same time, but fail to recognize that this is the time. The difference is intuition, which is being in the right place at the right time with the right awareness. You have to be aware of what's going on. And when you're aware of what's going on, you can make decisions, good decisions, if you know what your value system is and what your objective is. See, if you know what your value system is, there's certain things that you will not jeopardize, no matter if the goal is to get to the money. Think about this. If the goal is to get to the money, but your value system says we can't steal it, but the money's sitting right there on the counter that you need, then it's a very easy decision. I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to pay the consequences. The consequences are too high, or it's not something that I have 100 ways to get to the money, and this is not one of them. It's an easy decision to make. Other people would sit there and contemplate that. Why? Because one of their decisions is not being honest about money. It's that simple. You might think, well, it's more complicated. It is that simple. It's those questions in your head. You know, does this work with my value system? Is this part of my plan to get to where I'm going? Yes or no, and then boom, you're able to do it. A lot of people don't have that absolute, here's what I'm trying to do, and that's the reason they struggle at what they're doing. That's the reason it takes so long for everything to happen. It takes so long for everything to happen because you don't know where you're going, and you might not know exactly. Now, you might have, think about this, you might have your value system down, and you might know morally exactly what you're going to do, but you don't have a plan on where you're going. Same problem. Same problem. Why? Because you're like, well, I could do this, or I could do that, or I could wait around for another 10 years. I don't know. Why? Because there's no date and there's no plan on what you're doing. But when you say, oh my gosh, I have to get there now, I have to get there by the end of the month, now you have to make decisions much faster. Yes, there may be something else that comes along, but if I don't do this right now, what happens if I don't have another opportunity and I don't see anything for a month? I'm trying to get to where I'm going at the end of the month. Now you can make the decision very quickly. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Bess with some closing thoughts before we wrap up.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff. Hi to Laura. Hi to Thomas. Laura, I liked your comment that you use small talk that has nothing to do with business, then you pay close attention to your intuition. My phone will not open up what else you said, but I'll read that later in the comments. Thank you for that. Very important. I used to live in San Diego, and the Chargers were the football team there. And there's one story that John Maxwell tells about Stan Humphries, who won the starting quarterback position. And he wasn't the biggest or the fastest or the guy who could lift the most weight. So why did he win it? It was because he could read a situation, call the right play, and pull it off. And he led a fairly weak San Diego team to the Super Bowl in 1 year. All pro quarterbacks have physical talent, that's for sure, but the ones that make it into the Hall of Fame are the ones that can see things that others can't. They can make a change, and they can move before others even know that was needed. So how does that intuition happen? I know that Jeff has demonstrated that a few times for me, when he would several times call just at the moment I had a question or a need. And he almost like he'd hear it, and he'd say, okay, what do you need? I mean, he called right at that moment that had a very, very strong, specific question in my mind. And I thought, oh boy, that's a demonstration to me of law of intuition. Or, a good handful of times I would be working on a complicated project, and I'd be done, and just at that second, he would call. I thought, good intuition, a timing, good timing. I think, again, that comes from intent to serve and following our nudges and trusting those nudges. There is another story that John Maxwell tells in the book too. I do like the stories of this is a story of how to automatically read and then act, know what to do. This is U.S. Army General H. Norman Schwarzkopf. In 1969, Vietnam, he got a battalion that nobody wanted. They were really called the first of the sixth, but they got a nickname called the worst of the six because they were undisciplined. They had lousy morale, and they were getting killed, and they couldn't stay alive. And so the previous leader before him handed the baton to him and said, good luck. This is a lousy battalion, a lousy morale. But he didn't admit that he was a lousy leader. He didn't know the first thing about leadership. But Norman did. So he knew what to do. And within 30 days, his intuition and his action kicked in. He had those guys whipped into shape. And within a few months, his battalion was asked to do the hard missions, which only a team that was real well disciplined and had excellent morale could do. So he did achieve that. So the way to be a good leader using intuition is to read the situation, like Jeff was talking about, and read the trends, know what's going on even decades ahead of time. Read your resources and leverage and mobilize them. Remember that people are your most precious asset, and be able to read people, their hopes, fears, and concerns. And, get the attention off me, like Jeff was saying, and to read ourselves, because how can we know another person before we know our own self, our strengths and weaknesses and where they are, and how we can utilize all of that, all of these things together. What an art leadership is, isn't it? It's a cool art. All this stuff comes together. There's not really a formula, but it's more study and then follow the art. Dance with life, and it will lead you if you're willing. And cool things, magical things happen as a result. If you are not yet a member of the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show, we encourage you to go there and request memberships, because you get a free book and replays, notices, and community support, and real cool people that are there. Over 300 people are there now. So you can be in this like-minded, wonderful group. Tomorrow is law number 9, law of magnetism. You attract who you are, not what you talk about or not what you want, but who you are. That's a hard look at ourselves, I think. Anything else, Jeff?
I think that's it for today, guys. The law of intuition. Know when to jump offline. No, I'm kidding. But that is also one of the tricks. So what we do is we do this every day, Monday through Friday. At noon. Tomorrow we're going over law number 9, the law of magnetism. This is one of the most powerful ones, especially if you want to be a great recruiter. Definitely one to tune into. And like always, we appreciate everybody for joining us. If you can, comment, share, like. We appreciate that. If you're watching the replay, hit replay or post replay, and also where you're actually joining us from. And I'll turn this back over to Bess to close out.
And leave questions, you guys. You can type one in now if you're real quick. But the conversation goes on. So type in questions. We love to discuss. Forgot to mention that.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Guys, have a great one. Thank you.